There we go.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I apologize for being a couple minutes behind today, but thank you for your patience and waiting. And hit the gavel because that's what I'm supposed to do, even though I don't want to, but. So I would like to call to order the Technical Advisory Committee meeting. The time is now 9:31. So I will turn it over to Ms. Becky Golden for the roll call and determination of quorum.
Thank you.
We'll turn that over to Coley Tizell. All right, Coley.
From Pennsylvania County, Mr. Paul Agnello.
Present.
Mr. Robbie White.
Present.
Mr. Jacob Haswick. Mr. Mohammed Ben Omar. From the City of Fredericksburg, Ms. Jamie Jackson.
Here.
Mr. Bassam Amin.
Here.
Mr. Mike Craig.
Here.
From Stafford County, Mr. Alexander Osiak.
Here.
Brian Council. From King George County, Mr. Nick Minor. Ms. Kimberly Wilson. From Fairland County, Mr. Mike Fincham. Mr. Greg Pennington. From Federal Highway Administration, Mr. Ivan Rucker. And Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transit, Ms. Amy Garbarini. Here. Ms. Sierra Williams. From VDOT, Ms. Michelle Shropshire. Here. Stephen Hayes. Mr. Jim Ponticello. Mr. Dan Grinnell.
Is anyone online? Because I didn't hear anybody online saying anything, and I'm worried that they are participating, but we're not capturing.
There are.
Yes, you want me to say who's online?
They haven't been read out yet.
Okay.
From PRTC, Dr. Bob Schneider. He is online. Mr. Joe Stansby. From BRE, Miss Christine Hoffner. Mr. Nick Ruiz.
Here.
By Regional Transit, Mr. Aiden Quirk. And Mr. Craig Reed.
Here.
And GW Rice Tech, Ms. Kate Gibson. Here. And Ms. Lee Anderson. Roll call has been conducted and a quorum is here.
All right. Thank you so much. So I'd like to request, the next item is an action item, just approval of this meeting's agenda. So can I get a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
All right, second, please.
Second.
All right. We have it's been properly seconded for the approval of the agenda. I'm going to turn it over to the next item, which are the meeting minutes from the June meeting. I'll give everybody a second to review. They were in your packet. If anybody has any comments, questions, or issues or modifications to the minutes, as long as they're not administrative, which can be taken offline. But does anybody have any adjustments to the meeting minutes from the June meeting? All right, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the June meeting, please?
Motion to approve.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and properly seconded for the approval of the meeting minutes. Sorry, I forgot to ask everybody. My apologies on that one. So if you are in agreement to approve the minutes, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. All right, meeting minutes have been passed. All right, turning it over to Mr. Ellis.
We're going to just quickly review the last policy committee meeting to remind everybody where things are at. Remember, the policy committee doesn't meet in July, so this is the June meeting. Also, just before I kick that off, just to point out that all of the FAMPO and the GWRC smart scale applications have been submitted. So great work on that. I want to thank Carrie Barber in her absence. She's taken leave after submitting smart scale. I would also basically take leave if I was her. She did the bulk of the work, so I just want to thank her. Also want to thank VDOT, some of the VDOT members who are not here as well. Stephen's not here, I don't think he's online, but Michelle, if you could just convey our thanks to all of the team who worked really hard. I know there was lots of stuff that, changes we had to make and calculations that had to be done and so on, and we just want to thank the team at VDOT. Also want to thank the folks from each jurisdiction. Thanks to Paul and Alex and Jamie and Mike Craig and Bassam, all who else worked on those smart scale applications. Just to thank all the jurisdictions as well. It was a monumental effort. I'm really hopeful that we get a lot of our projects funded, but we'll know, in the new year. Just our thanks from FAMPO staff just for everybody pitching in and making it work. I think it actually was a good process. Here and there, we all got tired and a little irritated every now and again, but I think it was a great process. And I think we have some great projects in there. So thanks to everybody. They've all been submitted. Carrie pressed the last button on 11:58 on Friday night, so they're done. The agenda of the policy committee meeting, this is basically just to refresh your memory if you didn't attend policy committee meeting. Often these projects already come through the TAC, so you know about most of them. There were the resolutions authorizing smart scale. The Safety Action Plan grant, we're going to talk a lot about that today, so we don't need to rehash that. I just made the policy committee aware of this because the TAC did ask us to do the initial investigation at that point. Now, I just didn't want the policy committee to, in their August meeting, be asked to make a decision on something they knew nothing about. So I started the process just by giving them a brief background. The TIP amendments, there were some VDOT requested modifications, which actually were the ones that came from DRPT. Amy will tell you if you want more details about those. There's a commuter funding approval for the commuter routes. The annual listing of transportation project obligations, as you know, that's an accounting process. We have to record what money we spent. Next, scroll down. BPAC requested a non-voting member on the policy committee. A policy committee approved that in principle. They still have to approve amendments to the bylaws to allow that to take effect. The CTAC already has such a non-voting member. Calendar, the slate of officers, so the new chair of the policy committee was elected, Jason Graham. Meg Bomsky is the senior vice chair, was elected, and Mr. McLaughlin was elected again as the junior vice chair. Recognition of Mr. McLaughlin's service, and then just a couple of items under correspondence. So that's just, if you didn't participate, that's just what happened at the policy committee meeting at the last meeting in June.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah, I just have one question with the BPAC. Who's the chair that would be, I guess, going to stand for this fiscal year?
You mean who is the current chair of BPAC?
Yeah, like for the non-voting rep.
So the way that the proposal was put together, the chair will be the rep or the chair's nominee, which will, and they're putting in their bylaws an order, which would be if the chair can't go, the vice chair must go. And if the chair and the vice chair can't go, the chair will appoint one of the other official members of BPAC to serve. So there's like a ranking order that they're putting in place. So whoever the chair happens to be at the time would automatically be the non-voting representative of BPAC to the policy committee.
So they don't have a chair yet?
They currently have a chair. It's the gentleman from Stafford County.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Brian Gouge from our Planning and Zoning Department.
Brian is the chair.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, any other questions for Ian? All right, I'm going to quickly go back up to number 3 because I didn't get I didn't ask for a roll call, not roll call, I didn't ask for a vote for the agenda, even though we got a motion and second. So all those in agreement say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. All right, then I want y'all to come back and get me later and say we're not having a proper meeting, so.
Jamie is making sure.
Yeah, I'm watching y'all.
Up in my Robert's rules.
Right.
You have the power.
All right. We are at item number 6, which is the public comment period. Obviously, we've got folks on the phone. Comments and questions from members of the public are welcome at this time. If staff from FAMPO have any comments that need to be read aloud, I will defer to you at this time.
Polly?
No.
No public comments at this time.
All right, and is there anybody online that has their hand raised that need to make a comment at this time?
None, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you so much. All right, we're going to move on to item number 7, action and discussion items. I will turn it over to FAMPO staff, I believe, for these items.
Mr. Stephen Reed and Eric Tang from the consultants are going to make a presentation. Are they online?
Yes.
Are we able to see their? Yes, okay, great. Gentlemen, we'll hand over to you for your presentation. Please speak loudly, and we have the slides put up, and Coley will manage the slides for you.
Thank you so much. This is Stephen from Traffic Engineering and Central Office. I'm the Highway Safety Planning Manager within our Highway Safety Improvement Program. And I heard some chatter earlier about Smart Scale, and it was good to hear that the portal is working. I was involved 7 years ago with designing that. And I understand all the details on our team of contractors do all the safety scoring, which flows through me. So if you ever have any safety questions about Smart Scale, you can send them my way too. But as the planning manager, we started, before we knew about Safe Streets for All, we put aside a little bit of HSIP funds to do safety planning studies within the MPO, TPOs across the Commonwealth. And we did a pilot before COVID out at Roanoke Valley TPO, and now we've completed one in Richmond and are starting a few others. And Eric Tang has been leading that from VHB. Eric and I have worked on safety planning and Smart Scale years gone past. So I'm going to turn this over to Eric, but the intent was that we would have these safety plans that would lead more into action planning. So the hope is that we can get ahead of some of the data analysis that's needed for the action plans that are needed for Safe Streets for All, and then hopefully apply for some of the supplemental additional items and get into the action plans so that infrastructure grants can be requested in the future. So Eric, give them the overview of what we've done in other areas there, and please do stop and ask questions as we go. I think that would be best as the slides are up.
All right, Stephen. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Eric Tang of VHB Consultant Support, along with my colleague Sammy Snyder, who you can also see on the attendance list on your screen. We're supporting Stephen with this on this effort. So what we're going to provide you here on the slides here is just an overview of the whole technical process behind this data-oriented or data-driven safety study and how it eventually feeds into the Safe Streets for All funding program. Of course, this safety study does, help you prioritize projects, for HSIP funding, smart scale projects and whatnot, the original intent, like Stephen suggested. But we definitely want to tie this effort into the requirements for the SS4A program, which we'll describe in greater detail once I've walked through the technical aspects of this project. All right, so you can see there on the slide the items that we'll discuss in this brief presentation about the project scope, the various data elements, and then the Safe Streets for All, the SS4A, like I mentioned, and it will take questions throughout, like Stephen said, please do ask questions. All right, let's. All right, so similar to how we performed the Richmond Regional Transportation Planning Organization safety plan, this is less than a full year effort. Will be done in early 2023. But basically, through this process, I'll be working with you virtually, like you seeing me here on the screen right now. There will be meetings with the group in the room right now throughout the process, so you can see the various milestones that we're hitting in terms of data analysis at a couple times, and then another meeting closer to the end, reviewing the final draft report before it's completely finalized. The crux of this project is the data collection and the analysis. So taking the data provided by VDOT and then using that data to conduct a series of analyses to look at those crashes or those crash factors are overrepresented within your data set. And then also providing some recommendations, initial recommendations on potential countermeasures or those projects or activities to address the identified overrepresented issues. And it's all encapsulated in a final report. What you see there on the right-hand side is the cover page of the Richmond report. That's available at our TPO's or Plan RVA's website if you so choose to take a look at that. All right, let's take a look at the next slide. So as I've already intimated, we're trying to take a look at the historical crash data provided by VDOT. We're going to take a look at the last 5 full years, finalized 5 years of data available to us. And the initial push is to look at your more severe crashes, those fatal and serious injury crashes, as from the safe system approach. We want to take a look at the crashes of greater severity that has the greatest impact on your road system and society as a whole. But we can imagine that there are certain crash factors where you may not have a large enough sample size, so to speak. We may need to take a look at minor injury crashes as well, just to make sure that we look at a large enough group of crashes to see what are those contributing factors in crashes for various types in your region. On the right-hand side is just a comparison of the fatal crash rate for your area compared to the others in the state. Of course, this is at the MPO level. You can see FAMPO, I mean, you're in a quote good spot because you're last on the list, so you're the lowest there, but that doesn't mean that we stop there, right? You know, we'd rather see that, we would rather not see a bar. Right? We want to see that as 0, right? So hopefully something like this study can bring you towards 0. All right, let's take a look at the next slide. Similar to what we've performed for the other, for Richmond region and for the other regions that we're working with right now, is to not only to look at particular crash factors, but also taking a look at the relationship between crash factors. As you can imagine, crash may have multiple factors involved, right? So, I mean, you could have 3, 4, 5. You know, you could have a run off the road, crash involving speeding, drunk driver, not wearing seatbelt. You know, you can mix in a whole bunch of factors into a crash, right? So, an initial way of taking a look at it is showing the intersection, or for no pun intended, the interrelationship between 2 factors at a minimum. And one way for us to do that is to take a look at the Virginia Strategic Highway Safety Plan, the SHSP, and the emphasis areas in the most recent version released in earlier this year, which is the overriding strategic document over the next 5 years for safety investments in the Commonwealth. So taking a look at those emphasis areas and interrelating them, at least in this case, in a two-dimensional format. So what percentage of, if you look at vertically, if you look at the roadway departure, which is that 4th column, the numbers, but like looking at roadway departure and seeing what percentage of those roadway departure crashes involved impaired driving. So in this case, it's 20%, that orange cell at the top. And we would color code it to show that the red cells are of greatest proportion compared to the other factors in that same column. Another way for us to interrelate the factors is to go to the next slide. And you can see this is a way to overlap 3 different factors. So we can see impaired driving, speed, occupant protection, how they all overlap against each other. This brings us back to high school math or Venn diagrams, but this is a great way of showing the relationship between 3 factors. So we can also do that. Let's go on to the next slide. So oftentimes, when we look at safety, right, it's tendencies to chase dots on a map. What you see on the screen here is a series of red and blue dots from the eastern portions of the Richmond region, The red ones represent fatality crashes. The blue ones are serious injury crashes. Are there a series of routes that is the location of the majority of your crashes? That's the fundamental nature of what we call a high injury network. Are we able to identify a small portion of the roadway network in the region that is the location of the majority of your crashes? So, for Sammy and I, when we do this initial screen, are we able to select the series of fatal and serious injury crashes and maybe, let's say 10% of the roadway network, but it's actually a location of over half of your fatality and serious injury crashes. We would refine that percentage as we conduct the analysis to choose complete routes, so that you're not just choosing random segments throughout the network. We want to take a complete route and incorporate that as part of the network. So that's what we would do to identify a high injury network. On top of that, we try to overlap that against those shaded cells. You see here this various gradients of the Virginia Department of Health's Health Opportunity Index. And we want to show here how the high injury network overlays against health outcomes. In VDH's Health Opportunity Index, basically the darker the cells or the census tracts there are on the screen, that represents a lower health outcome, so lower accessibility, among other factors that are associated as part of that index. So we just wanted to show that relationship between health determinants and transportation safety. If we go to the next slide, another item that we're trying to leverage in terms of safety analysis is VDOT's Pedestrian Safety Action Plan. As part of that effort, a series of corridors in terms of top 1 percentiles, top 5% in the Commonwealth have been identified. And we would also do this using the similar process. We can identify the top 1% and top 5% of segments / corridors within the FAMPO region, and help you identify where those overlap with the high injury network and other crash factors identified in the previous slides that we've shown. So if you go to the next slide, we can show a graphical representation of that. You can see Henrico County in the yellow. You can see Richmond in the blue. But basically, we identify the corridors in terms of the percentile, and that'll just give you a listing of the corridors that could be prioritized from a pedestrian and bicyclist perspective. If you scroll down to the next slide. Another tool that we're trying to provide you at the conclusion of the development of the report is a series of Microsoft Excel-based spreadsheets, which help to automate what we call crash trees. Basically, in a sense, a flow chart showing crash factors or multiple crash factors for a particular crash type. So if we go to the next slide, I'll just give you an example of what a crash tree is all about. So what this crash tree does is not only tells you the various components of a crash, but ultimately tells you what combination of factors are omnipresent within a crash. So let's say for this flow chart here, if we start with the universe of fatal and serious injury crashes at the very top, we can break down at the second level what part of the roadway system are those crashes occurring. So you can see that in that second row of 3 boxes, the majority or the plurality of those crashes are on the other systems. So they're not necessarily in the primary or secondary system, although those percentages are really close. But then after you have identified the roadway system type, then at the very bottom, as an example, you can also further break that down by the number of lanes or the access controls. So you can break it down by like 2-way, non-divided, divided access, non-access control, 1-way roads, transition segments. So basically, in that Excel crash tree tool, you can choose the various factors that you want to analyze. and find that combination of factors. So if you go down a particular branch of this tree, you can say that, oh yeah, this roadway departure crash had, this time of day characteristic, the type of driver characteristic, the roadway type characteristic. That way, that can help you prioritize those investments with limited safety dollars, and also be able to identify those crash types so that you're not necessarily chasing dots on a map. If you see that within your region, there's a particular combination of factors in crashes, maybe you can find those additional segments in your roadway network that may not have a crash yet, but because they have similar characteristics compared to historical crashes, maybe that's a targeted area that you could identify. So this brings a proactive approach to crash analysis rather than being reactive of chasing dots on a map. If we go to the next slide, we've walked through really quickly the various data analyses that we would perform as part of the safety study here. And at the end of the report, we would also provide you with examples of various countermeasures or activities to address the identified crash factors from the previous slides. So in this, the last chapter, if you will, of this report, we would highlight the various activities highlighted in the 5-year SHSP for the Commonwealth. We'd also highlight Federal Highways Proven Safety Countermeasures, of which there are 28 of them, and see which ones work for your region. We would also highlight NHTSA's countermeasures that work, because not all countermeasures are infrastructure oriented. There are those behavioral ones where you work with law enforcement, you work with educators or with public communications groups for message dissemination. So what are those effective practices from that side of the safety ledger, as well as the last bullet there, the systemic safety countermeasures that VDOT has identified. They have 8 of them, and we want to make sure we highlight those as well. So how does this all tie into USDOT's Safe Streets for All program? So as Stephen said at the top, we're trying to see how this safety study can help you prioritize projects for HSIP, smart scale, etc. But USDOT has set up this program. So for those of you unfamiliar, it's coming out of the bipartisan infrastructure law. They have allocated $5 billion for the next 5 years for safety projects, safety activities, regional and local road and tribal road systems. So this money goes directly to agencies like yours. Does not go through Stephen. Most of the federal funding you've seen in the past has gone through Stephen, so you had to go through Stephen, the gatekeeper for these funds. But now this effort gives you an opportunity to get the feds, get money from the feds directly. And for this first year, the deadline is September 15th. Whether you go after September 15th or not, we can talk about that later. But there's allocated $1 billion for this first year of the program. And there are 2 pots of funding associated with that. Let's go to the next slide so it's easier to see. There are 2 pots of funding available. One is to develop an action plan, all right? And then the second one is implementing safety projects, what they call implementation grant. But to qualify for that implementation grant, you need to have an action plan in place. So, the common question that we get from this safety study that we showed you over the past few slides is, how does that fit with the action plan grant? And there are a number of components that are associated with the action plan grant, and that is shown on the next slide. I know I've gone through the previous 2 slides pretty quickly, but I can go back to them in a few moments. Because SS4A requires a comprehensive action plan to be completed to qualify for implementation dollars, to make sure you have an action plan in place, you need to fulfill 7 of 9 requirements. There are 3 mandatory ones and then there are four of the following, 4 of 6 that you need to fulfill. Once you've fulfilled 7, then you can qualify for the implementation dollars. But we need, first we need to fulfill the bullets here. So as part of that, you need to have, at least for the first 3 required requirements, you need to have your action plan developed within the last 5 years prior to application of your the grant dollar. All right. You need to, in this action plan, a comprehensive set of projects and strategies. So some of you are maybe familiar with the Strategic Highway Safety Plan, the SHSP, that I've mentioned several times already at the state level. Perhaps some of you have seen from other Virginia jurisdictions, their Vision Zero plans. So like Arlington County, Alexandria City, they're 2 examples of plans that have action-oriented, data-driven safety plans at the local level. And then the other third major requirement is to conduct a whole safety analysis with crash history, systemic needs, and this is where what we're providing you right now helps address that third bullet in that third required in that 3 required elements. And then after that, you need to fulfill 4 of the following 6. As you've seen from those Vision Zero plans, or even the state, the Commonwealth, SHSP, you need to have that leadership commitment. Have you set yourself a zero goal, X year, or reducing it by an X% by an interim year? You need to have that target stated somewhere in your action plan. You need to have some sort of oversight body, could be the group that's in the room right now, to monitor the implementation of the safety plan. The third bullet out of the 6 there is public engagement. What is that process to get public input into the development of the plan and the implementation moving forward? Fourth bullet there is equity. We sort of alluded to it with the Health Opportunity Index from VDH earlier. That's one way of us incorporating the transportation equity into the prioritization of projects. US DOT has also identified census tracts across the country that fulfill that meet 4 of their 4 of 6 requirements in terms of socioeconomic factors to show a transportation disadvantage, and I'll show you that in a few moments. And that they want to see how the action plans prioritize projects within those census tracts. Then that 5th bullet there out of the 6 is assessment of policy, identifying any gaps or proposed policy changes. How does the safety action plan, how does that change how you prioritize your projects? So let's say your long-range transportation plan, your bicycle or pedestrian action plans, things like that. How does that all change things? Change the way how you think of safety at your agency. And then lastly, progress tracking, making sure that the plan is not going to be sitting on the shelf. There's a continuous effort to make sure that there's evaluation of the progress of the plan in terms of both the impact, so the actual change in fatalities and injuries, as well as tracking the actual implementation of the various activities identified in the action plan. So that means there's a lot of requirements, right, that need to be fulfilled for an action plan so that you can qualify for the implementation dollars. But of course, you need to have an action plan first. I've already said, this safety study that Stephen and I have been scoped to provide you guys, that helps to fulfill the safety analysis component, that third bullet out of the 3 required elements. We can also address the equity analysis. We've been doing that for the various regions and taking a look at US DOT's map. Actually, let's scroll to the next slide. We can show you that map zoomed out at the Commonwealth level. You can see there on the left-hand side the various factors of what US DOT considers to be a transportation disadvantage. They have certain metrics that they've identified. It's all pre-coded This is a publicly available website there on the top left-hand side there. You can zoom in into your region and see which tracks in the Fredericksburg area meet 4 of those 6 factors on the left. So, in terms of the action plan, what we're telling you is that we're filling some of the requirements, right, for what an action plan is. The question is, right, how will your agency choose to apply for an action plan, right? And that's something for your agency to decide. I already mentioned the deadline for the first year funding is September 15th. In that application, it's actually a really relatively short application. It's basically a series of data pulls, population, percent of population in those yellow tracks that you see on the screen, and then a 300-word narrative to describe how your action plan will take a look at effective countermeasures, use a data-driven approach to identify projects and activities in such an action plan that ultimately will be used to prioritize project locations, and then subsequently you would apply for dollars once the plan is complete. That we can certainly take questions about that in a few moments, but I just wanted to point that out. And the other elephant in the room, which I've been said, and maybe some of you are already familiar with this SS4A funding, there is a required 20% match minimum at the local level. So you cannot use HSIP funds from Stephen for a match because that's federal funding, or at least federal HSIP dollars. Stephen can answer more of your questions about the matching from VDOT's side, but we recognize that as a challenge for some agencies across the country. We know some rural county and more remote, less populated state will probably be challenged to come up with a 20% match. You're in a more urban area, more highly populated, and of course you have a lot more competing priorities too. So that's something that your board would need to consider if you decide to go after SS4A funds. 20% match for both action plan development or the implementation plan grant. I would say the action plan grant is the feds estimates anywhere from $200,000 to $1 million to develop an action plan. I've never seen an action plan for $1 million. I think they've tried to set that up so that places like a large city like LA or New York, although they already have vision zero plans, that a large city would need more money, with considering all the outreach efforts that they need to deploy for such an action plan. And the implementation plan, they range $5 million upwards. For those MPAs that are less than 200,000 population, the minimum is $3 million for an implementation plan. Those are all estimates, by the way. The feds, as they see from this first round, see the types of applications they may get, that they'll get. I'm sure they will refine that number over time, but I think the feds have given themselves a way out in the way that they've written the language. To me, I feel like you apply for. There's a bit of negotiation, I guess. You sort of apply for as much as you can, and then they'll see they reserve the right to award amounts less than what you've asked for, especially with the implementation plan grants, because that's an itemized list of projects essentially. Whereas the action plan is pretty much a straight number. You have to estimate how much an action plan will cost at your end, and that's pretty much it. Sorry, I went a bit long there for SS4A, but I just wanted to go to the next slide. And just to show you what the next steps are for at least the safety analysis, our next steps for Sammy and myself is to go and get get from VDOT databases, the last 5 calendar years of crash data for all severity types, and then with initial focus on the fatal and serious injury crashes to see how that will see if there's enough crashes to make initial determinations of critical crash factors for your region. We'll also be using GIS systems and databases to get your latest roadway data. We may come back to you to see if you have more up-to-date road data information from your agency. We'll also get from VDOT the various pedestrian safety action plan information, and we'll be wrapping this all up with the final report in the spring, at the latest, spring of 2023. If we get it done sooner, we get it done sooner. I will say, originally, you've seen from our title slide, our focus was FAMPO. But through initial discussions prior to this call, and knowing that there's that local match element for SS4A, and USDOT is encouraging jurisdictions to work together. So like I mentioned, I gave you that example of a rural county may not be able to afford the match. They're trying to encourage places to combine resources, combine jurisdictions in a joint application. So with that in mind, Tammy and our analysis won't just focus on the FAMPO area, we'll actually focus on the entire GWRC region. So all 5 entities will be part of the analysis for this project. All right, I went through a lot there, so we'll be happy to take any questions or thoughts that you guys may have.
All right, thank you so much for the presentation. Definitely appreciate it. I will turn it over to anybody from the committee. Does anyone have any questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
This is Paul Aniello. I had a question on slide 4. If you can just go back to that, please. That's it. Mm-hmm. The question is, Fredericksburg area, like why is the number of fatal crashes so low relative to the rest of the state?
That's a great question. I haven't dug into finding out why that is at this time. This is just a summary level provided at the VDOT level over the past few weeks. So that could be a question that we could proceed to address as we conduct the analysis for the safety study.
So, Stephen, I think part of it is the.
I was just going to say, I think part of the reason could be because you guys have really bad traffic, and speed is one of the leading factors in fatal crashes. And if there's a lot of traffic, you can't go very fast. So I don't know, because it seems like Northern Virginia is also pretty low on that list. So.
Okay. Yeah, and the high VMT. So with the higher VMT overall, your rate is reduced, and then of course traffic considerations as well. That's exactly right.
All right. Any other questions from the group? Yeah.
Just a comment so that everybody's clear, and I'll explain this later in slides. But this is a project that VDOT Central Office effectively is doing on our behalf. There's no cost involved in this because VDOT has a grant or a funding allocation that has already been made of about $30,000 to support the production of their safety study, which produces a report, which is a safety plan. So the gentlemen that you are just hearing from are working on this study and on the report that will be generated. So we may be asked to participate in terms of just providing information, but the work is being done for us at no cost to us, and it is not tied to the SS4A grant directly in any way. It's an independent thing which VDOT was doing for us anyway, right? So it's going to continue, whether or not we apply for the safety SS4A grant or not. This will continue. They will study our safety needs and will present a report. It's a self-contained unit. And we're very grateful, I think, I speak for myself, but others may comment. I just think we're very grateful that VDOT is doing this work for us already. So we do appreciate that.
All right, thank you. Yes, it was a lot of information, Alan.
So the question I have is, it seems like we're doing almost duplicative effort here. So is VDOT pretty much developing what would be considered a safety action plan for the GWRC community, or would we be doing a similar effort if we applied for this grant?
I'm going to answer that question in the next slide.
Okay.
In the next set of slides. So if you could pop that one out, I've got a slide which answers that question. You want me to kick off? All right,
I'll
great.
turn it over to you. Item number 27A2.
So Becky and myself have done some work as requested at the last TAC meeting, and we've just shared these thoughts with you on the SS4A grant. Scroll down. You've just heard about some of the details of these grants. There are grants that are available under the Infrastructure Jobs Act. Can everybody hear me clearly with this mask on and my funny accent?
Yes.
And it's an effective strategy to improve local road safety for all road users and supports the goals of the state's overall strategic highway safety plan. So the state has a strategic highway safety plan effort, and what you just heard is part of that effort. Project funding under SS4A requires the action plan, you've heard that, and the grants are available to implement those projects, as well as to create the safety plan, and the links are there. Next slide. VDOT can assist with critical portions, and here's the answer to the start of the answer to Alex's question. Critical portions of the action plan development, but it's not the full action plan. So that's the $30,000 grant, and those are the analyses that they are busy with, which they've just explained to you and they're doing for us right now. Next slide. Now here's the full, just scroll down slightly more. Yeah, so there it is, Alex.
Okay.
So the items of the box around them are currently part of the safety study, which you just heard about. The items that don't have a box around them are not being done by VDOT, and we would need to do or pay somebody to do in order to create the action plan. So we've got to get things like some sort of governing body committed to zero or a substantial safety goal. Effectively, that means that our jurisdictions have to make a decision to commit to reducing road deaths and to work towards a zero death goal, or as close to that as we can get. We're a state, different states have different ways of expressing that target, and in our state, we don't have to get to absolute zero deaths. We're in what they call a towards zero state, so we can get substantially towards zero deaths. We don't have to actually get to zero deaths, but we have to get our jurisdictions to publicly state that they're supporting a process to reduce the deaths on the road. Second, we have to have a group that will monitor the implementation of these projects. So you have to call into existence such a group. I'm not sure that they have to meet very often, but you do have to have a group that monitors that you actually implement these projects. The data analysis is being done under this VDOT process. The public engagement, none of that's being done by VDOT. We would have to do the public engagement here or pay somebody to do it. The equity analysis, as you saw, the areas where there are equity issues, they are doing that as part of that process. Assessments of current standards and policies that we would have to do. And then the big one, a comprehensive set of projects and strategies. So once you know where the problems are, where are the deaths, where are the accidents, where are the needs, you have to then develop a comprehensive set of projects that will address those specific needs. So here are where we're having all the accidents. What are we going to do about them? Are we going to put in sidewalks? Are we going to put in rehabilitate the soft shoulders? Or what are we going to do to address those problems? And then you identify the projects for which you are going to apply for funding from the federal government, right? That's the whole point. You come up with this list of projects, and then you go to the federal government next round and you say, please can we have the money to build these projects because we now got a safety plan which says this is why we need those projects. And then an evaluation metrics, how are you going to evaluate success, and then development of a plan to achieve it. So that's what the safety plan is. And VDOT in the current project will help us with number 3 and number 5. The rest we have to do or get a consultant to do.
Question, right now in Virginia, does anyone have a safety plan in place?
So the project that VDOT is doing for us, and I'll let them answer that, Richmond has done that process and has a plan. I don't know whether that actually fulfills this because this full safety plan is a new project. Stephen or the gentleman on the line, do you want to comment on that particular question?
Yeah, most certainly. So yeah, the other regional plans that we've done or have just kicked off only cover those 2 boxes. So in our opinion, only the Vision Zero jurisdictions have enough of an action plan to cover the 3 required and 4 of the 6. So that would be Arlington, Alexandria, and Richmond, city of Richmond. And so, yeah, if you go out and look for their Vision Zero plans, you can see many of the components, like an annual action plan. These are the infrastructure projects we were doing, and these are the sort of behavioral outreach, education, enforcement strategies that we're pursuing for this work plan, this annual work plan. So those are the 3 that we're aware of in Virginia.
Thank you very much. Next slide. You know about the 15th of September deadline. Something that wasn't mentioned in particularly strong language is that you can apply for a supplemental action plan, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. I would use a consultant to complete the remaining portions of the action plan, right? We could assist perhaps with the public outreach, but we would need a consultant to work on the rest of that plan. We would need to apply for an SS4A grant to complete the remaining portions of the action plan, and the grant requires a local match. There's a link for you to explore it in more detail. The TAC recommended that we look into this, and as it is key to getting the project funding under the safety SS4A grant. Next slide. Okay, we are suggesting that we should apply for a supplemental action plan with a project cost of $120,000. We have spoken to consultants that we have on call, and their estimates for completing the remaining portion range between $70,000 and $150,000, depending on what's included, how much outreach we require them to do or not do, etc. There may also be some of our own work that needs to be done. For example, if we do the public outreach, there might be some costs involved, and we have to set up that committee, which the consultant can assist with, but effectively the committee has to be local and it has to monitor the plan. So we need to bring that committee into being, so there might be, a few dollars involved in getting that done. So we're suggesting that we apply for about $120,000 under the supplemental action plan option in the funding grant. We don't believe we're going to need $200,000 because we're getting some of the work done by VDOT already, and the cost estimates we're getting are indicating that we could probably do it for less than $200,000. And not a single quotation was for $200,000, they were all for less. The question then is who, yeah?
And Ian, for the main action plan, like is the $200,000, is that the minimum threshold for that?
So as the consultant from VHB said online, those are estimates indicated by the federal government. They're not a required minimum. So it's not like if you don't apply for the full amount, you won't get it. They believe that's what it should cost with their first guess, right? This is the first year this thing's coming into being, so they've published those as rough estimates. They don't have such an estimate, I don't believe, for the supplemental grant, only for the full action plan grant. And as we know, VDOT's doing a portion for us. We don't think the full 200,000 is required. And as I said, the cost estimates, not one came in at 200,000. They were all less because VDOT's doing some, and they don't think it's going to cost the full 200,000. So we propose a joint application with all 5 jurisdictions, but with a caveat, and I'll explain in a moment. The award would come in summer of 2023. So the application goes in now by the 15th of September. We can fill in the application forms. We've got to write a 300-word essay. We think we can do that. We can do the submission of the application ourselves as the VDOT, as SAMHSA staff. The award, the money gets given to us in the summer of 2023. We don't have an exact date. It doesn't say on the website. We can't tell you when. So that will mean that there's potentially a timing irritation for us. If we get those funds very late in 2023, we will not be ready in September 2023 to apply for the actual infrastructure grant itself. So we may be delayed by a further cycle. So we may only be able to apply the following year. It all depends on when we get the money, and they can't tell us except to say summer of 2023. And if you get the grant in summer and in September you've got to submit the infrastructure request grant, you can see there might be a time constraint there. However, we think this is a great opportunity to get funding for infrastructure that will help improve safety in our area. And we know of some of the areas where, we know on Route 3, there are lots of crashes, lots of pedestrians and cyclists injured and so on. We could do something about those.
Can the funds be used to pay for work done in arrears? Can started out ahead of the award and then, potentially identified a plan B if the funding wasn't awarded, but then if it was, could be used to just reimburse for the expenses?
So the danger there is we're going to appoint a consultant. Are we going to ask the consultant to work before they get paid with some promise that they'll get paid when we eventually get the grant? I think that would be dangerous.
No, I think what Nick was alluding to, if we used FAMPO money and then hoped for reimbursement from the grant program, usually the way that seems to work in the past is any kind of work done prior to the grant award is null and void for reimbursement, so.
These are all federal funds. Usually federal funds require an authorization before you can start to expend them. And then if you don't have that authorization,
You get in trouble.
Again, if you keep all of the federal funds, typically.
Okay, so that's what we're suggesting. I mean, again, this is a start suggestion now in response to the request from the TAC. You can change it, but that's our suggestion. Next slide. So we talked to Kate and the folks that do the, what's the word? I've just forgotten the word. The annual dues that are paid to GWRC by our jurisdictions. And we've given you 2 options there for the match. So if we go ahead, staff can fill in the application, but in order to complete the action plan, we need this grant of, let's say, 120,000, and the match would be 24,000 of that, right? So if all 5 jurisdictions participate, we're using the annual dues calculation, right? Because that's the only methodology I have, which is an approved one. That's what the numbers roughly would look like. If only the FAMPO jurisdictions apply and we only do it for the 3 jurisdictions, that's what the match would look like. So you can see immediately for your jurisdiction what it would cost if we do the 5 or what it would cost if we do the 3. Those are the amounts of money based on that dues formula calculation. Now, because King George and Caroline don't always attend these meetings, I did reach out to their staff and said, hey, this is coming, here's the presentation, here's the links where you can research it. there will be a match option. This is what the match option looks like. I didn't get a response from Caroline County. I did get just an email from King George saying, oh, can you just point us to the detail of where the dollar amounts are? And I pointed them to the slide. I haven't had any further response from King George or Caroline, and I noticed neither of them are here today. So they're not in the room to give their opinion, and I haven't had anything in writing. But as it stands, that's where we are now. We've done the research. We've got, as you've just heard, VDOT presented what they're doing, what the remainder looks like. We showed you the grant we're suggesting we apply for, what the match would look like. We would need the jurisdictions that participate to give us a letter of support, which would obviously then indicate that they're prepared to pay the match, but that they want us to go ahead on their behalf. The other thing to note is that the application indicates that there are multiple ways you can apply. So, for example, if we had 4 of the 5 jurisdictions that wanted to participate, a group of jurisdictions can apply as well. You know, so FAMPO can apply, GWRC can apply, or a group of jurisdictions could apply if it's not exactly, if it doesn't square exactly with one of our organizational boundary delineations. So it could be 4 of the 5 or 2 of the 3 or whatever. The official grant doesn't make a specific delineation. But as we are FAMPO and we work with GWRC as our fiscal agent, those are the 2 options we would suggest. So I'd like to take comments from the floor as to a way forward on this particular thing and any questions that anybody has about it. And we've still got VDOT on the line if we want to address any questions to them.
I think members of the committee, does anyone have any questions regarding the options, knowing that we probably still need to go back to our leadership on the cost amount, but does anybody have any comments? Paul?
Yes, one question is, the cost of the study would be the same if King George and Caroline are included versus not included, but why is that?
So VDOT is prepared to do is prepared to do the data analysis for us. And as I've indicated, they would consider doing it for the GWRC or for the FAMPO, and there's no charge to us for the data. So the data analysis is going to cost us the same whether we do the one or the other. In other words, it's going to cost us 0 because they have a grant and they're prepared to try and work that out to do that for us. So the data analysis side is not going to, there's going to be no change in the cost whether we do 3 or 5. There's no change in that. And if you scroll up to that slide with the list of things we have to do there, so the higher-ranking official body, that's a decision. There's not a lot of work involved there. The group to monitor, we have to bring a group into being. Whether we serve coffee to 3 jurisdictions or 5, whether we buy sandwiches for, you know, there's not going to be a major difference. The difference starts to appear when you do public engagement, and that depends on how much public engagement we do. So you can, you know, public engagement can cost you $1 million if you want to. It's a level issue. So whether you do a little or a lot, the public engagement can be also driven through the jurisdictions. We can use FAMPO staff. There are all sorts of ways we can do that. We can make that more expensive for the 5 than for the 3. But it doesn't seem like they have got a detailed list of what you have to do in terms of public engagement. So it's a thing that can be massaged to fit. The current standards and policies, I mean, FAMPO tends to do those kind of scoring methodologies for FAMPO, but they could equally apply to GWRC. I don't see a major difference there. There may be some analysis of what King George and Caroline currently do, but I don't think there's a lot of documentation that they even have available to analyze. I think it's more a case of they go with whatever we do because they don't have a duplicate set of scoring systems and so on. And the evaluation metrics, whether you're going to evaluate 3 or 5, I don't think the cost is going to vastly change. The evaluation metrics will get developed as a set of metrics for jurisdictions. And I don't think it's going to be different either. So I don't think there's if you look at that list, set of projects and strategies and the development of a plan within the 5 years, well, this is the plan. So that's, but the set of projects and strategies, there may be more work there, I guess. I don't know whether, Stephen, do you have any comment on the magnitude of the effort that might change if it's a GWRC project versus a FAMPO project?
Ian, Stephen has stepped away for a 10:30 call, so he's not able to answer any questions about to your question. But I know what you said earlier about the data analysis. It doesn't change. Sammy and I can do the data analysis for 3 or for 5 jurisdictions. It works out the same.
All right, other questions?
I do. Once they do the analysis, is that analysis for each localities? And what's the end product? What is it? I mean, you find out something wrong, and then is it a recommendation how you tackle those things? How is that thing?
So, would you like to answer that question as well?
Yes. It's Eric again here. That's a great question. The Richmond report, we did do the analysis for the region as a whole, as well as for each of the 9 localities, and we would do the same for this report. 1 for the region as a whole, and 5 separate sections for each of the 5.
So we basically have the data to move forward with the application process for the federal grant.
Would be a fund later on for each solutions of these issues that you find out?
So the analysis, if we do this, would result in a set of projects that we would agree to, right? And we would use those set of projects to apply for the funding for that set of projects. So this action plan would include all the analysis, all the public engagement, everything else, and a set of projects that will address the problem. And then we would go from that set of projects to the federal government to say, now can we have an implementation grant to build sidewalks, soft shoulders, guardrails, I don't know, whatever it is that we're going to build.
All right, other questions from the committee? All right, so the question is, do we want to move forward with the request of asking whether it's just the all member jurisdictions of GWRC, or of course there's less cost to all jurisdictions if they participate, versus a recommendation with just Spotsy, Stafford, and City of Fredericksburg. Those are basically the options for option A versus option B. Does anybody have any thoughts or comments on those particular options?
I'll give to Paul in a second, but whether we do it, whether the application goes in from FAMPO or whether the application goes in from GWRC, doesn't really matter to us as staff, because GWRC doesn't have transportation planning staff. So it's the same staff that's going to do the work on our side, whether you send it, whether the cover letter says GWRC or whether the cover letter says FAMPO. It doesn't phase us too much because we will still do the work.
All right, Paul?
So I'll just quickly say we're supportive of this effort, and also with Carolina and King George, if they would like to be part of it, we would support that as well.
Sure.
We can go either way.
I think we should encourage them to join us rather than just going by us. Safety is for everybody.
So does anyone have any option with us recommending to the larger body option B, which includes all the localities?
Option A.
Is it option A? Oh, see, this is why I need Rodney in my life. Option A.
Rodney's doing a good job.
All right, so can I get a motion for option A, please?
Motion to approve.
All right, can I get a second?
Second.
All right. Hopefully staff got that.
Madam Chair, I have a correction. Our agenda, the slide has swapped the option numbers. So if the motion is to support all GWRC localities, you'd be voting on option B. I apologize for that error.
Did you read that right? All right, so for clarification purposes, I'm going to just state this for the record. What we're endorsing is going to be Resolution 2302 that includes, and I'll just read it, a resolution of the Fredericksburg Area Metropolitan Planning Organization supporting the filing of an application with the Office of the U.S. Secretary of Transportation for the Safe Streets for All SS4A grants to develop a safety action plan for GWRC localities. So that is the motion that we are voting for. Paul, can I get you to endorse that one again? All right, and the second again? All right, was Nick. All right, all those in favor of that, or passing that motion along, or passing that resolution on is this to GWRC or to FAMPA or both?
Well, we're going to send it first to the FAMPA Policy Committee, and then we will take it to the GWRC board.
Great. All right, all those in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes.
Can I just ask for an additional decision from this body? I'm going to go to the GWRC jurisdictions formally now and ask them to tell us if they're willing to participate and pay their match portion. If they say no and they pull out, can I ask this body to then endorse the alternative, which is for FAMPA to proceed with it anyway?
Absolutely.
I'd like you to please ask for approval so that I don't have to come back here again and then waste a month, because we got to get this application in by the 15th of September.
Okay, so I will say I do think that us agreeing on that does include that because we're going with that, but just for clarification purposes, does anybody have any objection with proceeding with all jurisdictions in the GWRC, regardless of whether Caroline or King George participate?
Yes, I do have an objection to that. I don't think it's fair that we pay for their participation if they're not willing to help cost match. So if the GWRC is not interested in participating in the cost sharing, then I think we should concentrate on the 3 FAMPA localities.
All right, any other comments to that? I'll make that a vote before.
I'll say we would agree with that.
Okay. All right, so I am just going to put this, so we've already endorsed option B. However, what I'm going to put forward to the group is that if Caroline and or King George are not willing to participate, and I'm going to put them separately because one may want to participate and the other one may not, that we only move forward with those jurisdictions who are willing to financially contribute to this study.
Yes, that's great wording. That helps me if it goes funny. Yeah.
All right, so can I get somebody, I can make that motion, right? All right, so I'm going to put that forward as a motion. Can I get a second on that?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Great. That's great wording. That will help us. Thank you.
Go ahead. So we are on item B, 7B, Transportation Improvement Program. I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, Madam Chair. I'll read a portion of the rollover process document for the public record. At this point in the development process of the working STIP scenario, it's placed in a lockdown status. This lockdown period is necessary to allow for planned obligation data to be prepared based on static project data, allow all planning partners time to incorporate public participation efforts, rural cooperation efforts, and development and production of draft and final TIP and STIP documents. Once a new STIP is approved by FHWA and FTA, STIP actions processed during the lockdown period may need to be rolled over into the new STIP using the rollover amendment process agreed to by VDOT and FHWA. Rollover amendments are used to update a newly approved STIP based on the most recent amendment or administrative modification that took place during the lockdown period. Once the rollover amendments have been noted by FHWA, MPOs will be expected to update their TIPs in a timely manner so that the TIP and the STIP remain in sync in accordance with federal regulations. That concludes my presentation on that item.
All right, thank you.
So just so everybody's aware, the whole state of Virginia is in this process. The state is creating a new STIP, and we are required to follow and create a new TIP. The good news is that I've hired a new staff member starting next Monday, who is a tip expert. Everybody say yay. We're poaching him from an MPO in North Carolina, and he's doing exactly this in North Carolina, so I'm feeling very relieved, because right now we have 2 vacancies, and both of the people that have been promoted elsewhere were our tip people. So we currently have nobody on the staff who's a tip expert, but we will from Monday, provided the gentleman arrives. We will from Monday have a Dr. John Ridout. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And I'm really excited that he'll be coming. And I'm going to hand him a little package that I'm going to say, have at it and tell me what we need to do. Anyway, that's just a little cynical, but the process has begun. We're meeting on Tuesday with VDOT. Susan is coming across because we have to verify that the current projects that we have on the list are in fact the correct projects. Remember, you can't put anything into the STIP if it's not already funded. So it's not like we can go and say, hey, give us a bunch of projects. No, there's none of that. We are just verifying that for the new STIP, all of the projects are the correct projects, all of the details of those projects are correct, that they're all actually funded, and removing projects which are complete and which have closed out. So that's the process. It's not as complicated as it sounds, because we can't add random projects to the STIP.
All right, great. So I'll turn it back over to you, Becky, for a few of the items which I believe are all administrative modifications.
Yes, we have 2 administrative modifications. The first one, item 7B2, changes the funding year from FY23 to FY22. The next one, number 3, modifications update funding allocations for projects. They're already in the TIP. There is one resolution 2303.
You missed number 4.
Oh, sorry. Number 4 is an update for update funding allocations for replacement rolling stock. All those 3 are Fred Transit. Anything you'd like to add, Fred, folks, on those 3?
Just a quick, I mean, obviously there's no action required of this committee, but it's just getting right items in the right year. FTA has been on us, so.
Kind of a housekeeping.
Yes.
Housekeeping on those 3. This number 5, resolution 2303, we're in the public comment period for that TIP amendment. This is adding 3 new UPC codes, and Amy Garbarini communicated with Mr. Allis prior to policy committee. Coley and I listened to the video recording, that this is really a good news item and provides commuter bus service from Spotsylvania down to Caroline and then up to the area, and 3 commuter buses, and then work on a parking lot in Stafford is this bundle of projects. And we'll send Amy and Ciara the public comments that we received. They were from one of our citizens, Rupert Farley, that read what was advertised, and we have informed him of the purpose of the project. He's very supportive of them, and just has some suggestions for clarification as a public reading. What was advertised was not, didn't credit the great project. Mr. Allis also was asked by policy committee who would run the bus service, whether it would be Omni Ride, and Ian informed the policy committee provider has not been yet selected, but this sets up the funding for.
Anyone have any questions on this resolution?
I have a couple of questions. One is, didn't we approve this resolution last meeting in June?
So we approved a resolution last meeting to begin the public comment period.
Okay.
The public comment period has now come to an end, and the policy committee will need to now take action to amend and put these in the TIP. So we're bringing it now to say this is the resolution to say, yes, put these in the TIP. And so we just ask for your endorsement, not for an actual decision to approve anything, because it's a policy committee decision to close the comment period. They'll have a hearing at the meeting, they'll close the comment period, then they'll vote to approve this resolution, which will put these items into the.
We support this. Do you have a question though, basically with this process? I'm just surprised that Exit 130 Route 3 kind of was not included in this analysis, just given that that's probably the most congested arterial in kind of the Fredericksburg region. And that has a couple of large commuter lots on it, which would be well suited for basically commuter bus service.
This whole item was a surprise to us as staff, because when we started to dig in and ask more questions, it became apparent that the I-95 corridor study listed a set of projects, including commuter buses and parking lots and so on. Since that study, we've not heard anything. And then we got this communication requesting this, right? And it transpires that the CTB approved this set of projects. How they decided on those, I don't know. I don't know whether Amy or anybody has got.
Yes, so there was a prioritization process that's kind of laid out in the actual study. I wasn't involved in this
Study
at all, so I mean, I can't give you a lot of information regarding the technical.
But this was approved by the CTV?
Yeah.
Okay, so that means it cannot change, basically.
Right.
Okay.
And I mean, I know that the original intent of the study was kind of amended in 2020 or 2021, I can't remember. So I don't know if there's an opportunity for projects to be added at a later date.
So two questions. When you said the 95 corridor study, what specific study? Was that the?
I've got the answer.
Okay.
It's, all these projects with hashtag I-95 CIP.
Okay.
Are from the corridor improvement.
Oh, corridor improvement.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we can send, the link to that good study.
Yeah.
Follow-up item.
I think that would be helpful.
The larger study that was done prior to the pandemic, it was led in conjunction with another study that was done on I-64, followed up, it was after the 81 study. And there was, we studied all the interstates. There were several public meetings that were held at James Monroe High School. At the time, Deputy Secretary Donahue came and spoke at those meetings. And then, I believe it was last summer, that's when the CTV took action on that prioritized list of projects. And they funded different projects. Some were transit projects, some were capital improvement projects. The parking ride lot that we're getting ready to start some on 17 in Stafford, that was one of the capital improvement projects our region got off that list, in addition to some transit.
And the year of implementation for this service would be which year? Is that?
It probably depends on when it's initiated.
Year of implementation.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily,
Okay.
but I mean, I can
I would probably say within 5 years from now.
Okay.
Usually that's how these federal projects work.
Yeah.
So one other comment just with the Exit 130 Route 3 bus, that kind of came up in public meetings about the I-95 study basically back in 2019. Samantha, they sent a letter basically giving input to the state on the study and some other items. She requested that the Route 3 be added as a bus location. I'm not sure what the response to that was.
I wasn't even on staff then, so.
Yeah, the letter would have been sent, I think, in November of 2019.
Yeah, I wasn't on staff, so it's before my time. Don't know if anybody knows about that.
I don't position on that fall either. It would have, whatever happened, the project how they got funded is what
Right.
will be.
Do you want to follow up with me?
Sure.
Send me an email.
Sure.
Do that.
Great.
All right, so just a follow-up item on this is that, I guess in this case, Paul, since he has some situational awareness, will reach out and just clarify what happened to that FAMPO letter and if it was included and or considered or does it even exist in your world? So we'll follow up on that. Okay, thank you.
And then, Madam Chair, if we could just ask for endorsement of this, it's one of those where we don't really have much choice in the matter, because otherwise we say no to the CTB, we don't want the money for the buses, it's a bit, so we just.
All right. Okay, so can I get a motion for Resolution 23-03?
Motion to approve.
All right, can I get a second, please?
Second.
All right, that was Alex. All those, any comments, discussion, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those that wish to say nay? Nope, no one at this time. All right, motion passes. On to number 8, VDOT FAMPO travel demand model.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We've reached out to just about everybody to get information for the update of the travel demand model. It's been going great, and pretty much that's, let's go to the next slide, Colin. We've completed the, reached out to everybody, and also we have taken all of the VDOT monthly data Excel information that we've received since 2016 to current, and looked at every UPC code in that database. There are about 400 of them. And then I used the expenditure stream as far as to try to find an in-service date of when expenditures stopped. So that gave me a very good in-service date. If we go to the next slide, I sent localities this entire spreadsheet, and we will send that out as a follow-up item to TAC. That includes the UPC number. This is just a partial shot of that information. The project description, and then also off to the side of that, we have an in-service date, and then a latitude, longitude of if it's a segment project, we had the lat long of the start and end. If it was an interchange project, just the lat long of the center point of the interchange. Also, the VDOT modeling folks wanted the designs for the interchanges so they could correctly code. And I just want to say how proud I am of the region to look at the Thornburg, the innovative interchange, and the interchange in Stafford, the interchange in Fredericksburg, compliments to VDOT site, that I could find those good design plans. And next slide, we then wanted to test the lat long. You always want to make sure you're not in Antarctica, that you have the longitude and latitude mixed up. So I don't have an ARC subscription, but I can use a Google map, and Alex knows how the magic I can do with a free Google map, just to make sure the lat longs are all in the right place. This information has been provided to the modeling folks, and that's considered complete. So last slide. And maybe, Ian, you might help with the modeling year and so forth that you helped with Friday before last, as far as ridership data and this last bit here.
Yeah, so just want to point out that VDOT has recommended that we update our transportation analysis zones because the Census 2020 from the Census Bureau has changed their census blocks and their census block groups, and now our transportation analysis zones don't line up at all with the census infrastructure architecture. And so it would be better for us to align those a little better. So VDOT has a consultant who's doing the model update. So I've suggested that, without asking you, so forgive me, I'm asking for forgiveness rather than permission. I've asked them to ask their consultant to propose new transportation analysis zones for our area and to submit that proposal to us. So when I get those proposed new transportation analysis zones, I'll bring them to the TAC for you to have a look at. But it does make sense to try and align the data, because it's much easier to make maps and to do other data analysis if you don't have to keep having vastly different architectures. It's just more easy to make those. So they're doing that. Secondly, they needed to get population data from us. And you'll remember we paid Cambridge Systematics to verify the data for our 2050 LRTE. It doesn't make sense to me to do that again. So I suggested that what they do is they take the data that Cambridge Systematics verified with you all some months back, and that they just use a percentage increase methodology over the period to calibrate the employment and population data for this FAMPO travel demand model update. So just letting you know that that's what we've done to get the data. It saves us having to wait for the transportation analysis zones and to then put data in them and then to come back to you and have you go all over again and do this process we just did sort of 7 months ago with Cambridge Systematics. I hope that's okay with everyone. Remember, VDOT is driving the process. We're just providing data. Our role is to just give them data on what's required. They also requested something which is not on the slides, account for slugging. And no one here at GWRC or FAMPO can remember doing counts for slugging ever. VDOT says that the last time this model was updated in 2015, they received from us slugging data. I don't even know if anybody in this room was around in 2015 when the slugging data was given to them, so nobody knows how it was done. Nobody knows if it was even done. VDOT believes it was done. So staff here at FAMPO and GWRC are putting together a team to go do some damn counts at an ungodly hour in the morning. I think it's next week. And Lee from GWI Connect has agreed to just identify the park and ride lots, allocate staff to teams, and we're going to go out there and physically count vehicles and count numbers of people that get into the vehicles so that we can actually send them some data. We don't actually have a methodology and we don't have a record of previous counts having been done and how they arrived at those data.
Are you using the slugging website that they have? I mean, it's really old, but they have the identified locations of the slugging, I guess, origination points down here. And then second question is, can you share that data with us when you have it? That's stuff we've never been able to get our hands on either.
The answer to that is I will have to put you in touch with Lee.
Okay.
She's going to design how we actually do it.
So Ian, that was where I was with FAMPO, but I was with VDOT, and I think I do vaguely remember that effort. And I was down in the central office, but I think that Liz McAdory at that time was kind of the commuter, basically a park and ride lot coordinator for TPD. And I believe that study was kind of done through her, and she worked basically with FAMPO and with basically, I guess, the Northern Virginia, maybe MBTA or TPD to do that at a number of lots.
Okay. What was her name?
Her name was Liz McAdory. She is now kind of the Stephen Haynes for Richmond District. Which at that time, that's what I was. I was the Stephen Haynes for Richmond District.
Okay, great. I will ask Lee if that helps, if she could find anything else. But yeah, that's all we know. So we're going to try and get it for them. It's a bit of a pain, but we're going to do it and just try and get it done so that they often count. But basically, our role, as I understand it, is to just feed the data, and that's for our transit folks. That's why we're also reaching out to you to say, can you tell us your route changes and all that, because that's what the purpose is, to just feed them the data so it can build the model. The consultant will start building the model on the 1st of September. And we will be reaching out again in January to confirm partnership on our transit operators like VRE and so on, because we're waiting to get the full FY22, sorry, not FY22, calendar 2022 ridership data for Fred and VRE and the other operators, Omni Ride, etc.
Yeah, I was just going to make a point on that. So we had a really good call last week about that, and just because of the concerns with seasonality, they want a seasonality, but for us, it hasn't been seasonal. It's been, ridership up every month, just because with the return to work. So it wouldn't show anything realistic in the future. Your counts would be way off for VRE. So we're going to wait till the end of calendar year 22.
And Correct. That's the problem we discovered on that call, is that, we realized on that call, is that when is an average year now, right? When last did we have an average year that we can build this model off of? And there's really no good answer to that question, as Jamie and you and DRPT will tell us. There's no average year. And as you know with the model, is if you don't put in kind of the average as your starting point, and you put in 2020 or 2021 or even 2022 as your starting point, that model is going to be way off. So we're going to spend some time thinking between now and January as to how to actually put in a base year. And if anyone has any clever ideas, we'll be happy to hear them, but we don't really have a good base year to put into the new FANFO travel demand model for transit, because transit is all over the place. And I don't want to use 2020 or 2021 data. It's a complete. So we're going to wait until we've got the full 2022 data and then discuss what the data looks like in January and see whether it's useful. Otherwise, we're stuck with maybe 2019. I don't know, but we'll see. So that's just a feedback on where we are with that. It's quite a lot of work for us, gathering all the data from you all and from going out and counting cars in the morning and all that, but we're doing it as best we can.
That sounds terrible. And anything else, Becky?
No, that concludes my presentation.
All right, correspondence? Any correspondence, folks?
A couple of items we wanted to point out to you. The timeline just for the STIP update, you've got that there in the correspondence. We sent it all out to you, so you've already got it, so I'm not going to read it through. Carly? There's the timeline. We're hoping Dr. Ridout will look after that for us. VRE just got this. This will interest you. VRE board has now approved the signing of the contract for the upgrade on Fredericksburg station rehabilitation. That's the cost, and that's the actual letter. The head of VRE sent it to me last week, just to say it's finally done, it's finally signed. They have signed with the contractor to start work, and they expect to start work in the fall. That just gives you an idea of the costs. And if you scroll down, there's the consultant, the firm. Just scroll up, sorry. There's the firm that was chosen, Clark Construction Group, and they'll be moving on to site now in the fall and commence construction on the Fredericksburg station. So it's done, and we're just waiting for them to start setting up their hoardings and move their trucks on site. So you will see construction, I would guess in September, you'll start seeing boards going up and work starting on that.
And I'll just say one thing, if you have specific project level questions, direct them through me, because the current PM, he's going to be actually leaving in a couple of weeks. So I don't know who it's going to be reassigned to, but just ask me, I can figure it out for you.
Right.
And then the other thing is, this project will include a stair and egress on the back side of this building here. Well, not literally on the building, but coming down off of the embankment, off of 2-track there. So just be mindful, construction is going to be taking place in the
around our building.
Around the building and everything.
And it includes the bridge rehabilitations of a number of the bridges over roads in Fredericksburg. So where all that exposed steel is and the chunks of concrete falling off, I'm guessing they'll fix that.
If you don't mind, share with us like the scope of work and if any lane closures or something like that, that would be great.
Yeah, let me make a note of that and I'll talk to a deal.
Thanks, Carly.
All right, any other staff reports? We're on item number 10.
We're looking forward to our new staff members starting next Monday. We did have 2 vacancies, so we're filling the one on Monday. We're working through applications we've received for the second position. As you know, Jordan has gone to a new position in the defense contracting industry, and so we're looking to replace that. And I lost my intern, so we're busy replacing. I know you all have similar staffing issues. I know VDOT's advertising, and I know the city's about to advertise, and Alex's Stafford's about to advertise. So I know we're all looking for people, but We found one good one, I think, and we're looking for one more.
All right. We'll steal that person too, just kidding. A member report?
As I said to my boss in Boston before coming here, I'll murderize you.
Oh, wow. I've never seen that side of you, Ian. I will actually accept that challenge if it doesn't come across. It sounds like a highlight of my week.
I'm just...
No, it's okay. Like, I will take that gangster from you. I appreciate it. So member reports, does anybody have any notifications of any cost estimate changes for the FAMPO projects that we have? We said that we would keep those as separate items, correct?
Susan is not here today. I'm not sure why. I did get one email from her just indicating that there is an item that is closed out. I just wanted to give it to you so you know what's going on, because it does mean money coming back to us. Project closeout on the UPC 93225, Route 610 and Onville Road, improvements for BRAC, and this project is closed out, and there's some funds left over, and she has informed me that they put those funds in the balanced entry, so when we do our next CMAC, STBG, and HEP funding allocations, well, it won't be HEP this time, we would have those funds available to allocate. And it seems like, okay, I won't say because maybe I'm reading it wrong, but it seems like might be some money. Anyway, there's funds available that is being given back to us to reallocate.
Great. Any revenue sharing projects from the group? All right, any updates from the jurisdictions? Spaffy?
So I just want to say with revenue sharing, we do have a large project for the Germana Point Drive extension, which was added to the 6-year plan. Basically, that VDOT maintains basically in June. And I guess if you need more information on that, let me know. We also had a new TAC project. I don't know if you need to know about that.
No, that'd be good. I'd share.
We had a sidewalk, right, project for the Chancellor Park Drive sidewalk. I'll say with cost estimates, we're not aware of any changes recently, but we haven't talked to VDOT about this recently, so it's maybe something has changed.
VDOT's going to be looking at projects that are going to go into add in FY '23, so that's all projects going to add before next June. We're going to be performing an analysis of just the construction phase estimate and the localities that have projects that have in that window as well. We'll be getting with you probably this week to talk about your project, and if you'd like to update your construction estimate in a similar fashion, we'll be updating ours. We've got some very specific inflation numbers based on which quarter we'll be updating these. So there'll be some changes. I'll talk to Ian about the RTP and TBC spreadsheet. We keep, and there's some discrepancies on that between what we gave to you and what's in there. Project, small things.
You mean the approved list that was approved at
May 16th. I've been looking at it.
Okay. I think that's probably the mechanism to.
That'd be great. I'd love to get together with you, maybe face to face, and we can. That'd be great.
Go through that on a regular basis. Just that might be a good tool to keep updates, changes on projects. It's kind of fluid right now.
Oh, I know, it's going to be all over the place. I think we understand that. Chair, I just have one project in relation to this funding question, which is quite important. Our Freight Summit, which is scheduled for the 29th of September, I've been trying to work with Susan to get a final approval. It's like a federal approval or a central office approval on the $30,000 we need to spend. And there's been no progress on that. Susan has sent me a one-line email last week to say there's an issue with the project funding. She's working on it. But, I mean, we've been waiting 4 months now, and we have got less than, today's the 1st of August? we're running out of time to put on the summit. So unless VDOT can resolve that, we may have to cancel or postpone the summit because the consultant has to do pre-work, data analysis, they have to prepare the agenda packets, slides, all that kind of thing, and I can't give them a notice to proceed to start yet because I cannot get the approval for that particular funding. So I'm raising it at TAC because I've tried raising it with VDOT and I'm not seeing any progress and I don't know what else to do, but we're looking at pulling that summit if we can't get the approval. It's the last step, the final step of getting it's approved, all the funding's approved, everything's gone through all the FAMPA committees, sent the documentation to VDOT, VDOT started working with central office, and something has happened. And Susan's not here today to give us any info.
Any thoughts, Michelle?
I know Susan said we're working on it and we're close, but again, it's right now. Checking.
Sounds like there's a problem, though. She said to me last week there's a problem, but didn't give me any information. Anyway, the point is...
And I can check on it again today.
Yeah,
Thanks.
and if there's a cutoff point, just let, at this point, just let FAMPO know if we don't hear back by the 15th and you have to, or whatever the date is.
We're getting very close to the point where I'm going to pull the project because the consultant won't have the time to do all the work necessary to prepare for the summit.
Sure. Yeah, I would just identify a date. Go ahead, Paul.
This is just a thought, like if there's a problem that maybe can be worked through, is it potential to reschedule the summit to the later phase of this fiscal year? Maybe it doesn't happen until February, something like that. To give more time maybe for issues to be worked out?
I mean, we would do that. I'm happy to wait another week or so to hear if, central office can sort it out. But if kind of like by the end of next week we don't, then I'm going to probably look at postponing it and doing it on another date, yet to be decided, because we'd have to just find a time. We try to pick a time that's not during like holidays when nobody's around, because then participation is lower and so on. So we'll find another time later when we think there'll be good participation.
All right, so we'll wait basically till the FAMPO packet goes out, and then, actually a little bit before then, we'll go from there.
I'll let you know if there's some change that we need to deal with.
All right. Stafford, you got anything?
Yeah, I don't know, we've probably already made mention about the two revenue sharing projects that were awarded some funds for our 610 widening project, and I believe the US 1 and Lake Hill intersection. And then, based on information we received from VDOT late last week, our cost estimates for our smart scale projects have increased about 20% from the estimates we received back at the end of March. So after we kind of did an exercise at the county to squeeze blood from a turnip and take all our available money in our CIP to kind of reduce our smart scale request down to about 30% of the project cost, we've now had to increase that to about 50% in order to finance these projects. So we'll see how we do in our smart scale ask, since our Garrisonville Road project will be seeking almost $40 million in smart scale, which eats up a huge portion of the Fredericksburg district allotment. So we'll have to wait and see. I would like to talk with you, Ian, afterwards to get some information on our US 1 and Lay Hill projects, cost information on that, and make sure we have all the up-to-date revenue sharing money and county committed funds that were properly indicated. I didn't have enough chance to coordinate with Carrie before she submitted those applications, unfortunately.
All right. City staff? Tom, Mike? All right, Nick?
Yeah, I'd like to come back to the group next month and do a little presentation on where we are with our system plan update. I think by then we might have some good information about, we'll have a retrospective, look back on ridership, but we'll also have some preliminary projections. So it's good to know that the FAMPO travel demand model is happening concurrently, and if the TACs are going to be updated, depending on where we are, when we get this information, make some updates to our projections. But so keep me in mind for the agenda. I'll give you a final yay or nay kind of later on in August.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone, VDOT, DRPT, DWRC?
For DRPT, anyone that's keeping up with the transit modernization study, that's they're working on the draft action plan, and I'm going to present to the EPC in early fall. So,
Anybody else I missed? My computer just died. Okay, all right, so our next meeting is September 5th at 9:30. I will be on time. And thank you, everyone. Special thanks again for FAMPO staff for all the smart scale applications. Y'all have done tons of magic. I have totally not been involved, so thanks, Mike, on our side for making it happen. But y'all have a great day. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
One question, is the next meeting, is that the day after Labor Day, or?
Yeah.
Labor Day.
Oh, yeah, that's a typo on the agenda, sir.
So we're meeting on the 6th?
12,
12th, I thought, right?
12, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Thanks for the
Yeah, thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
That would be a tough one.
No.
Yeah, I just wanted.
Good job.
I'll be here, whatever it is. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jamie. Good stuff.
Yeah, we got these presentations, 10, 15 minutes. We got to tell them 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.